Elite Facts presents
8 Greatest MMA Fighters of All Time. Now, before we start this list, please keep in mind that although some of these choices are controversial, we're not going to be focusing on that. Instead, we'll be looking at these fighters from when they were at their best. With that being said, here are 8 of the greatest MMA athletes of all time. 8. Jose Aldo. We can already see the comments section now. Conor McGregor this, and you'll do nothing that. Yes, we can't continue this part of the list without mentioning the infamous loss that Jose Aldo suffered to Conor McGregor. All in all, Jose got bested by Conor. There's no way around it. Call it a fluke, call it whatever. Either way, Jose lost, and he isn't doing himself any favors by complaining and obsessing over McGregor, which, as of the writing of this video, he states he's over McGregor. However, this doesn't take away from the legacy that Jose Aldo has built for himself so far, as he's only 36 years old and has an impressive record of 26 wins and 2 losses. Still not impressed? He had a winning streak of 18 wins that has spanned over 9 years. That alone is incredible. Jose has an incredible background in martial arts, as he's well versed in Muay Thai, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, Luta Livre, boxing, and capoeira.
7.
Jon Jones. Now, believe us, we've got strong feelings against Jon Jones over what's occurred over the last year or so, with him failing a standard USADA test just before what was supposed to be one of the biggest UFC events in history, UFC 200, to him just being handed an opportunity to fight current light heavyweight champion Daniel Cormier on his return without any warm-up bout or title eliminator bout in place. But putting all of this aside, Jon Jones is an outstanding fighter. At only 29 years of age, Jones has an impressive record of 22 wins and 1 loss, with 10 of those victories being title bouts. Jones is well versed in wrestling and is a very unorthodox and explosive striker, making him one of the more unpredictable fighters on the roster. Bundle this together with having the longest reach of any fighter in the UFC. He's tied with Stefan Struve for longest reach, as both have an 84.5-inch reach. And you have one of the best fighters in the game today.
6.
Georges St Pierre. Say what you want about his instant title shot against current middleweight champion Michael Bisping, Georges St Pierre is a phenomenal fighter. Originally performing in the welterweight class from 2002 up until his hiatus from the world of MMA in 2013, Georges St Pierre essentially owned that division, as he boasts a great record of 25 wins and 2 losses. 14 of those wins were title bouts, as St Pierre has held the UFC welterweight championship on 2 separate occasions. St Pierre has defeated the likes of Johnny Hendricks, Dan Hardy, Matt Hughes, and Nick Diaz, just to name a few. GSP is well versed in wrestling, boxing, Muay Thai, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and Kyokushin.
5.
Chuck Liddell. Even though towards the end of his career he got knocked out 3 straight fights in a row, you can't deny that Chuck Liddell was one of the most brutal fighters to ever step foot in the octagon. Liddell is well known for his extensive striking background in Kenpo, Koikan Karate, and kickboxing, as well as an excellent grappling background in collegiate wrestling and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Although Liddell finished his career on a bitter note, he also finished it with the second most knockouts in UFC history, only just behind Anderson Silva. During his tenure with the UFC, Liddell had 23 fights. 3 of those fights were excellent bouts with Randy Couture. Liddell, along with Couture, are widely credited for bringing mixed martial arts into the mainstream of American sports and entertainment. Liddell is a former UFC light heavyweight champion and a semifinalist in the Pride 2003 Middleweight Grand Prix. On July 10, 2009, he was inducted into the UFC Hall of Fame for his contribution to the sport of MMA.
4.
Royce Gracie. If we're going to talk about the greatest MMA fighters, we need to talk about the guy who revolutionized the sport. Royce Gracie single-handedly revolutionized the sport of MMA. You can pretty much say that MMA is in his blood, as he's the son of a legendary jiu-jitsu master by the name of Helio Gracie. Royce paved the way for anyone who steps into an octagon, cage, or ring today, even more so for fighters such as Anderson Silva, who's a Gracie jiu-jitsu student. That's right, the greatest of all time was taught by the guy who revolutionized the sport. Not only did Gracie help bring the sport to mainstream audiences, he was a dominant force in the octagon. His only flaw, however, was that he wasn't the greatest when it came to striking. However, his grappling and submission skills easily made up for it. Royce Gracie fought in a total of 19 fights, with his record standing at 14 wins, 2 losses, 3 draws, 2 KOs, 2 by decision, and 12 submissions. He was the open weight champion of UFC 1, 2, and 4, and would be fighting 3 to 4 fights in one night.
3,
Randy Couture. How could we not mention Randy the Natural Couture? If you don't know who he is, do yourself a favor. Go back and watch some of his fights. They don't call him the Natural for nothing. During his tenures in the UFC, Couture became a 3-time UFC heavyweight champion, which is the most of any UFC athlete on the roster at this current time. He's also a 2-time UFC light heavyweight champion, making him one of the few athletes in UFC history to hold championships in multiple divisions. On top of these accomplishments, he's also a former interim UFC light heavyweight champion and was the UFC 13 heavyweight tournament winner. As we previously stated, Couture is the first of only a select few fighters to hold 2 UFC championship titles in 2 different divisions, along with BJ Penn and Conor McGregor. Couture has competed in a record 15 title fights and currently holds the most title reigns in the UFC, as his combined reigns as heavyweight and light heavyweight amount to 5 reigns. Another thing worth mentioning is his career longevity, as Couture has a 14-year career, with his final fight happening in 2011 against Lyoto Machida. Couture was 47 years old when he finally decided to call it a career. His last fight with Lyoto Machida marked his 24th fight in the UFC, the 3rd largest number of fights in the UFC. Tito Ortiz is first with 27, and Matt Hughes is second with 25. Couture is the 4th member of the UFC Hall of Fame. He's the only person over the age of 40 to have won a UFC championship fight, having done so 4 times. Not to mention, he's also the oldest heavyweight champion in UFC history, as he held the championship at the age of 45. Couture is well versed in Greco-Roman wrestling, catch wrestling, submission wrestling, and judo.
2,
Anderson Silva. This one we know is going to cause controversy, but let's be honest. Before that serious leg injury, Anderson Silva was one of the greatest fighters of our time. Even with his recent performances, many people still cite Silva as the greatest of all time. The first and probably biggest thing worth noting is his championship defense record, as he currently holds the record for most consecutive title defenses in UFC history, which has only recently been tied by current UFC flyweight champion Demetrius Mighty Mouse Johnson. That alone is impressive. His win-loss record as of now is 34 wins and 8 losses, and 1 no contest. That spans over a 20-year career. His methods of finishing bouts are very unpredictable, as he's famous for finishing a fight using a straightforward front kick in his bout with Vitor Belfort. However, most fights he either finishes by delivering vicious knees to the head, vicious knees to the body, or even on some occasions finishing his opponent with a submission, usually a triangle arm choke or a rear naked chokehold. Silva is well versed in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, Wing Chun, boxing, and Muay Thai. Now, before we name our number 1, here are some honorable mentions. Conor McGregor, Lyoto Machida, BJ Penn, Frankie Edgar, Demetrius Mighty Mouse Johnson, Uriah Faber, and Mirko Cro Cop.
1,
And now, without further ado, here's our number 1 greatest MMA fighter of all time, Fedor the Last Emperor Emelianenko. This one might be obscure to casual MMA viewers, but anyone well-versed in the industry knows how fantastic a fighter the Last Emperor was. Fedor Emelianenko was one scary dude back in his prime, as he was essentially untouchable. Hailing from Russia, the Last Emperor began his martial arts training in the disciplines of combat sambo and judo, and was among the world's greatest sambo practitioners both before and after his highly successful entrance into the world of mixed martial arts. As we previously stated, Fedor in his prime was essentially a tank, as he was more or less unbeatable. What makes him even more scary is how he knew how to finish fights even if it looked like he was in trouble. No matter how much trouble he was in, he would always finish on top with an excellently executed submission or knockout. He beat the best heavyweights in the world at the time and did so convincingly. He only had 3 losses at the end of his career. He was an absolute beast. So, did we miss anyone? Well, let us know in the comments below. Hopefully, we'll see them past all the Conor McGregor quotes. Thanks for watching.
Don't forget to like us and subscribe for more Elite Facts.